But I want to tell you about this IRA, this savings plan. You really need to hear about this, too, because this is going to happen, and it's going to happen unconstitutionally because Obama said that he's going to direct the Treasury Department to do it. No legislation whatsoever. And John Giraldi at Forbes, if I didn't pronounce it properly, my apologies, he points out, if you're wondering how the federal government's going to unload those trillions of dollars in long-term Treasury bonds it's been buying for the past 5 or so years, quantitative easing is the technical term, Obama dropped an anvil hint in his State of the Union address last week. You're going to buy them with the retirement savings you'll be putting in the president's new IRA program. If ever there was a misnamed initiative, this one ranks near the top. It's a mashup of My and IRA. It implies a greater level of possession than the familiar individual retirement account, or real IRA, which came into being 40 years ago during another retirement crisis, the 1970s, when a deep, stubborn recession drove corporate defined benefit pension plans into the ditch. This time, a deep, stubborn recession triggered by Wall Street institutions, well, and I would add Obama's Marxism, that also sell IRAs, drove a lot of individual retirement plans into the ditch. The fix, he writes, was the Federal Reserve's buying up a staggering amount of Treasury bonds to keep interest rates low and hopefully encourage investment in economic recovery. Now, those bonds that our government now owns, here's the government using debt to buy debt. It's just incredible. But those bonds the government now owns are yielding low rates at a time when most experts are predicting rates will begin to rise. And when rates rise, the value of bonds fall. So U.S. Treasury bonds have become so unpopular, not even China wants them. In November, a People's Bank of China official gave a speech in which he said, it's no longer in China's favor to keep buying U.S. debt the way it has over the past decade or so. There are better deals elsewhere. So what does that mean? That means the federal government is stuck with a lot of unpopular bonds, and one surefire way to get rid of them is to sell them to the American public as a retirement savings vehicle. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Just remember something. The government is about self-preservation, not your preservation, self-preservation. That is about preserving the government. The Democrat Party is about preserving the government. I'm not saying our constitutional republic. I mean this bloated, insatiable government. So here the federal government is stuck with all these bonds, which barely give interest. So they have an idea. Let's dump them on the American people. The pitch for the new IRAs is that it's an automatic savings vehicle, a little like the old-fashioned savings bonds that our parents and grandparents bought for their kids and grandkids. Oh, sounds so wholesome. On the surface, it sounds like a good idea. Encourage people who don't have the money or discipline to buy an IRA or Roth, put a little away each week for the next 2 or 3 decades. IRA contributions will be invested solely in U.S. debt, guaranteed against loss, and will pay the going Treasury bond rate. But there's a catch or two. There's no tax deduction for buying IRAs, so you'll be buying them with dollars that have already been taxed. And the interest you'll earn, such as it is, because it's so low, will be tax-free. But remember, the government gets his cut up front, its cut up front, and the use of your money for decades. And then the government unloads some of the mountain of bonds on you. Now, you, on the other hand, you give up control of your money to the government. And that money can never participate in a robust stock market or any other asset class like your home, a business entity, or insurance policy. As a financial advisor for more than 3 decades, he writes, I know that automatic saving is the single most important tool in building a retirement fund. But the IRA idea is just another example of how government controls so much of what we can and can't do with our retirement savings by dialing it up or dialing it down on the tax rules. There isn't enough money in our economy for IRAs to bail the government out of its bond glut. So we should be alert to what may be coming down the pike. The tax laws already require IRA funds to be invested in stocks and bonds to qualify for the tax deduction. Wouldn't surprise me at all if at some point in the near future there was a proposal in Washington to require a percentage of all IRA funds to be invested in the debt created by the Federal Reserve and fiscal policies of the United States government. Pretty treacherous, isn't it? You know, so much of what the statist left is about is a lie. So much of what they propose is a lie. And so much of what government does is based on a lie. You know, like global warming, now we don't call it that, and it's freezing out. We're having a horrific winter, one of the worst winters in a century, and they're still pushing this carbon stuff. They're still shutting down coal mines. They're still pretending that we can control weather and so forth. The government won't change its policies because these green policies are the old red policies. So facts don't matter. Science doesn't matter. Reason, knowledge, none of it matters. And so the government is off and running. We're having to subsidize this. We have feckless politicians who don't seem to be able to stop it. We have courts that give their imprimatur to this. So phony science, non-science, is changing the landscape of this nation. And you can see what they're doing with the Federal Reserve, the endless printing. Now they're in a box. So who's going to bail them out? You and me. And again, under a myth, under a lie, that somehow the IRA is a sound investment, when in fact they're doing it to move around their shells on the table so you don't find the P.